Use reverb on any guitar solo, for it is a sign of weakness. Number 9, thou shalt not use reverb on any guitar riff, for it is a sign of overcompensation. Thou shalt not use reverb at all, for all guitarists should just stick to playing dry.
Bum, bum, bum. Hello, Internet. How's it going? Coming at you live, LTGuitarist to Kick and YouTube and the other place that we're not talking about currently. Yeah, what an interesting stream we have ahead of us today, talking about the various ways that people, you guys, anyone, why am I fascinated by this bit? How could one visualize audio? How do I go about doing it? How could you do it? And why on earth you would want to do it? That could have been a more straightforward and seamless intro, but hey, whatever. Wonderful. So let's kind of just get into it, I guess. This is a little bit different compared to recent streams. So rather than making a piece of music from scratch and taking it as far as we can inside of 2 hours, what we're doing instead is talking about something that I do for art purposes, and something that you folks watching at home might want to try when making music videos, or just making art for the sake of art, or just stuff that I think is quite interesting in a sort of nerdy way. So you might just like to play around with it. Little note before we get into it, it is still incredibly hot here in East Anglia. There is a fan on back there. I don't think you might be able to hear like a slight rumble in the background, but honestly, like, it's not much louder than that computer or that computer, so I'm sure you'll deal with it. I'm sure you'll deal with it just fine. So who is this stream for? What's the point of learning about audio visualization? What can you do with it? A lot of the techniques we're going to talk about. How many techniques do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've kind of got 7 individual music or audio visualization techniques that we're going to get into. There's crossover between some of them, and I've probably missed something important, but meh. This is going to be a good overview. A lot of these techniques have some kind of practical application, right? That makes sense. A lot of these things exist to perform a function in the world of either music performance or music production. So that's what they do. Like their existence already fulfills a creative job, I guess, a creative role. But what we're doing is taking these things, manipulating them in some way to do particular things with sound. So I like to find interesting ways to visualize sound, and I also like to manipulate audio visualizers to create interesting visual results, and then sometimes bring those visual results back into the audio realm. So a lot of what I do isn't just about making a sound and turning it into an image in some way. It's also about then translating that image back into sound, or translating other images back into sound. That is something we will talk about soon. Looking at my notes. Cool. So I do these things for art reasons. I've said about that. They have a function outside of art. That's why they actually exist. We're going to talk about a few different ways we're going to visualize stuff. I'm going to talk about these 7 things one at a time, because I only have one mouth. And yeah, I'll try to talk about the genuine real world application of these things, and then how one could manipulate them. I think before we get into the specific things, I think it might be helpful to have the microphone point at my mouth. Oh no, the unspeakable. The unthinkable has happened. Oh my god. This is not good broadcast. Nailed it. I think what might be helpful before we get into it is to define the elements of sound. specifically the elements of music. And again, this is just a really broad strokes definition, but in my mind, there's kind of 5 elements of music, or sound, whatever you want to say. So those 5, for the purposes of today, are volume, pitch, sonority, time, and mood. Okay, so volume is, pretty straightforward. Is it quiet, or is it loud, or is it not making any sound at all? We usually measure volume in decibels, or dB for short. We've got pitch, which is measured in frequency or by note. So if I play a middle C here, that's coming through the speakers and it shouldn't be. That's better. Make it a little louder. There you go. That's a middle C. Middle C, in terms of frequency, is 256 hertz. You could play a couple hertz either side of that and it would still be recognizable as middle C, but middle C in a pure form is 256 hertz. HZ hertz. We could also refer to that as a pitch, like I did, middle C. Middle C is the C in the middle of a keyboard. It's also known as C3, which is half a Star Wars robot. Is that a good joke? No. C3 because it's the 3rd C on most keyboards. C3, C2, C1, C0, C-1, C-2. There is a C-3, but most instruments don't have it. C3, C4, C5. Yeah, makes perfect sense. So that's pitch. Instruments, sonority, tone, I've kind of grouped together. So, if you play something on a saxophone or you play that same thing on a guitar, you could be playing exactly the same pitches, the same notes, but it's going to sound different because of that instrument's sonority. You can also change an instrument's tone. You can make it brighter, you can make it darker, you can kind of muffle it and restrict it. So I've put instrument, sonority, and tone as a little group by itself, because I think as far as we're concerned today, those are kind of all the same thing. Yeah. So we're not talking about specific pitches, we're talking about the instruments achieving those pitches, right? Time is a really big group, because music is all about time, and sound is often very much about time. When we say the hertz, the frequency of a pitch, 256 hertz, means that pitch is basically oscillating at 256 times a second, I think, which is science, right? So music in its most fundamental form is about time and speed and duration. So I'm including note duration. Is it staccato? Is it held out? Is it a quarter note? Is it a dotted eighth note? Is it 4 bars long? As well as tempo, the actual speed of the overall piece of music. Time signature, how do we divide the beats within that music? Is it a bar of 7/8 or is it 4 bars of 4/4? So time is a huge category that I've kind of just bundled together. And finally, genre, style, mood, lyrical intent in music is what we want to convey. Like, are we telling a story? Is it a happy story? Is it good overcoming evil? Is it, are we trying to convey a sense of ennui? What do we want people to feel when we listen to this piece of music? And we achieve that by, we can achieve that with harmony. We can achieve that with tempo. We can achieve that with a combination of all these elements. Like, we could have a really, really sad chord progression, but if we play it like really, really fast, that's going to convey more excitement rather than melancholy. If we take happy chords and play them really slow, that might be sadder than if we played those happy chords fast, right? And also lyrical intent is quite important. it's often we interpret music quite literally. If a singer says, here's a thing that I feel sad about, you're then gonna probably sympathize or emote along with that in some way, right? So I've combined genre, style, mood, lyrical intent as another big group. So these elements, volume, pitch, sonority, time, and mood, these are the 5 things that I think we can visualize in some way, right? And actually, I think before we get into the 7 things, I'm gonna add a thing. Let's call it method 0. You could just do a literal interpretation of lyrics. If you're trying to create a music video for a piece of music that has lyrics, you could just do the things. You could enact the story that the lyrics are telling, and that would be perfectly valid. That'd be a really straightforward, good, a very normal thing to do, which is why it's the 0 in this particular list, because we're going beyond that. Let's have that as our baseline. We're going to get way more abstract, way more, maybe just a little bit more scientific than that. I say scientific to make myself feel smart. I am not as smart as today's stream is going to imply. So volume, pitch, sonority, time, and mood. There are more musical elements, probably, and there are maybe more sensible ways to divide these up. But I think this is a good starting point for today, and I think some of these things are harder to visualize than others. So that's just the list that we're going to go ahead with today. Cool. So we've had thing number 0. Let's talk about method. I need to stop saying thing. Method, I think, is a much smarter way to approach words. Words are stupid. We're going to start off with score. Musical score. If I open up in Cubase at the top here, score editor, I've got this little phrase. Interesting. Let's try that again. It's not obvious that I made sure I could open everything. Why are you starting with the I need to just scroll back. Scroll back. There we go. Right. I don't use the score editor in Cubase. I have no reason to. So we're starting off with musical score, musical notation, pretty much because I don't think it will occur to most people that this is a form of music or audio visualization. Certainly, it's nothing like what we're going to talk about for the rest of today. So that's why we're starting there. So let's cover the basics of what musical score is. For those of you who are unsure, I don't read music. It's truly never come up in my life yet at 34, so I reckon it's not important. How do we read it? It's similar to reading an English language book. We read from left to right, and then there are lines, and then we read down. So left to right is time, and then top to bottom is also time. You normally have one of these lines. We might have like several lines read at the same time. Each line, well, this is a collection of 5 lines. Each grouping of 5 lines is called a stave, and we have 1 stave per instrument. Pianos have 2 staves. They have a bass and a treble. That's because the hands, as far as stave is concerned, are separate instruments, because they can play different things, right? So your left hand and your right hand are, you've got a bass and you've got a treble, and then sometimes they overlap, but don't worry about it. So these 5 lines and the gaps between these 5 lines are pitch. So we basically go lower pitch down here to higher pitch up here. And these dots are the notes, and the specific placement of these dots tells you whether to play, that's one note, this is a different note, this is a different note, this with a symbol in front of it is a different note. So the specific placement of these dots on or between lines tells you which pitch to play. lower at the bottom, higher pitch at the top. The specific shape of the dot tells you how long to hold a note for. So these are all the same duration. This is a rest for the same duration. Excuse me, tummy noises. This dot up here has got half as much hair. Its tail is only 1 strand long. These tails are all 2 strands. So this is twice as long as this. This is another rest. These are all the same. This is another rest. And this is another long one followed by another short one. This is a long rest. This is an even longer rest. Right? So the specific shape of the dot, as well as the symbols around it, can indicate either a change. Sorry, let me start that statement again. The specific shape of a dot indicates the duration of the note, how long you hold it for. There are also symbols that appear above, on top, by the side of each dot, and they can either affect pitch or duration or how loud or soft you play it. Lots of symbols. The function of score is to tell a musician how to play their instrument for a given piece of music. Maybe so obvious we don't need to say it out loud. There are alternative versions of scores, so guitars and bass have a similar looking thing. Guitar tablature is 6 lines, and then you put a note. Each line is a string of the guitar, and you put a number on each string to say which fret to play. Bass is similar. Bass has got 4 strings. We also have, so tablature works the same way. You read it left to right and then top to bottom. We also have MIDI. This is that same collection of notes. Left to right, again, left to right is time. The height, low, high, low, high. Low at the bottom, high notes at the top, right? The colours here, obviously the length of the block is the duration, and the colours in this case are indicating velocity. You don't get to indicate... It's harder to indicate velocity for specific notes on tab because it's an extra symbol you have to read. Here, we actually don't need to read this. I don't need to play this. This is me telling the computer what to play by putting notes into this piano roll, right? So, okay, let's talk a little bit about score. The fact that there are now alternative versions of score for modern instruments is linked to why I think musical score is interesting from a visual perspective. I think musical score is very interesting to look at as a non-reader of musical notation because it's archaic. It's really, really old, and it hasn't had an update in a very long time. And the fact that people are looking at written music and saying, actually, there's an easier way to achieve this communication of how to play a song with tablature or with MIDI, you know, depending on the instrument you're playing, I think that indicates that, okay, that there's maybe a better way to do this depending on what kind of instrument you're playing. I also find it really interesting that the specific symbols used in written music are specific to written music. A treble clef only really means one thing. A dotted semiquaver with, you know, on a specific line with a flat symbol next to it only really means one thing. And it's also only helpful in the context of written music. Yeah? So... given that I've just spent probably what feels like too long talking about written music and saying that I don't think it's really worth anything, why am I concerned with it from an artistic point of view? I'm going to open up Art from Sound on Instagram. This is me. This is I don't want to say a secret account because I haven't hidden it. I also haven't really advertised it as a thing that I do, and I also haven't uploaded anything in a very long time. Back when I had a lot more free time, I was uploading quite regularly, and this is basically where I put still images of audio-based art. Sometimes it's instruments that are very, very broken, or musical equipment that's very, very broken, because I had access to a lot of that. Sometimes it's just finding interesting ways to portray audio visualization. Sometimes it's just putting things in mirrors, you know. And I'm very pleased with the sort of color gradient of this particular page as well. A lot of it's just mirrors, just reflections of stuff that I find interesting. So anyway, that's Art from Sound on the Instagram. This is a great example of what I mean when I say that I think musical score is fascinating to look at, because again, these symbols are very recognizable. Even if you flip them, they're still recognizable as score, and I think there's something to you know, the kind of ostentatious markings. I think there's something really pretty and nice to look at about musical score. So I think it's quite fun to kind of like put it through mirrors and see like, well, what does it look like when we do this sort of thing? At some point, maybe I'll think, okay, well, what if we take a piece of written music and put it through all these kind of glitchy processes, bug it out, turn it into something a little painterly, and then can we translate it back into a performance piece? And the answer is probably not in a way that sounds good, but the process is the art, right? So that's method number one, the written musical score. And as far as I'm concerned, like it serves a purpose, which is communicating music in a way that makes it performable and communicatable, and also transcribable to other instruments. Like it is an important thing to have. I like to screw with it, and most of the time that's putting it, you know, through mirrors and stuff. So that's the written score. Let's see if we can find. I've also done the exact same thing with MIDI. Again, these MIDI patterns I think are very interesting, and you just put it through a few mirrors or turn it into a fractal. You come up with something really, I think, really pretty to look at, which is what art is, right? Yes. So let's put this off to the side again. And move on. The next thing is spectrographs. Pause for refreshment. That was refreshing. So you may have caught my stream a few weeks ago. Ooh, Julienne Stam. Which software or softwares did I use to do those visualizations? Great question. So the thing that's really fun, I assume you're if you're asking about this software, this is Cubase by Steinberg. If you're asking about how I achieved these, this is really cheeky. Pretty much everything here in terms of the processes were done on my mobile, on my phone. The images are usually photographs that I've taken or screen caps that I've taken from audio projects. This is a photo, for example. I use, let's have a little look here. Disco Bees, thanks for the follow on Twitch as well. I'm not sure if the animation popped up there. So I use a few different programs. There's Glitch Lab, Glitch Space Lab. Hang on, let me just see. Is there anything incriminating if I just hold this up? No, not really. Focus. So that's my arts folder. So Glitch Lab is really good at bugging stuff up. 8-bit photo, same. Pixlr is good for changing colors, changing contrast, editing in like a photo editor kind of way. The big boy there is Mirror Lab. Focus. That's not what focusing is. Let's try that again. Mirror Lab is the app there. The second one, the middle top one, Mirror Lab. Focus. God damn it. It's called Mirror Lab. It's really good, and that's what I put this photo into to create this kind of spiral effect. It's what, it's what this was based in. And then one of my favorite things to do for these specifically is to put stuff through Glitch Lab and then put it into the Mirror software, because there's something about the way that you take something really chaotic, like glitchy kind of effects. It's chaotic, it's unpredictable, but then you put it through mirrors and repetition, and you're sort of bringing form to that very chaotic thing. I'm a fan of that contrast. I hope that answered your question, and I'm very sorry if it didn't. Please do. Please don't be afraid to ask again in the chat if I don't cover anything with enough detail. After all, that's why we're here. Otherwise, I'd just be talking into the void. Wouldn't that be upsetting? Spectrographs. If you caught my stream a few weeks ago, when I had Richard Jackson and we were talking about the score for Type to Your Bleed, you will have seen a bit of what I do with spectrographs. Specifically in terms of hiding images in audio, which we'll get to in just a moment. So let's open up sine wave with spectrograph. Here we go. So this again is Cubase. The instrument I'm using here is Retrolog. That's a very simple kind of sine wave. I'm using sine wave for a reason. Retrolog is a nice little synthesizer that comes with Cubase. I think it comes with all versions of Cubase, which is very nice. Supervision does not come with all versions of Cubase, but it does come with the version that I'm using right now. Let me just play a few notes and you'll see. Sine waves are quite hard to hear. Let's pump that up a couple octaves. That's a spectrograph. So what we're seeing here is time left to right. So if I play a note and just let it go, eventually it disappears. So that it's scrolling for us, which is very helpful. We also have frequency, bottom to top. So I don't know if you can see here, we've got 50 hertz down here and we've got 10 kilohertz up here. So if I play a super high note, it's up there. If I play a super low note, it's kind of down there. And you'll notice that the higher pitched notes are a lot thinner, they're a lot smaller, and the bassier notes, whoa, look at that. They're very chunky, aren't they? And that's why bass instruments sound and feel bigger, because they are. They manifest it in a bigger way. So we're seeing a lot of lines, aren't we? So left to right is time, top to bottom is pitch. Brightness indicates volume. So I actually don't have a velocity on this, so you'll just have to take my word for it. The brightness of these lines indicates how quiet or loud it is. So when we play a simple sine wave, we see one big line, in terms of horizontal lines, one big line, and then a much thinner line, and then a much, much thinner line. In fact, that much, much thinner line, which is here, might not be entirely visible, depending what device you're looking at, but you can trust me, it's there. We also have a vertical line at the start, there, and a smaller vertical line at the end. That's just I guess you could call an artifact of using these old, very pure sine wave synthesizers, or pretty much any sound. We're just hearing the attack. There's like a little bit of a an almost imperceptible click at the start and at the end of these sounds. We can get rid of that by increasing the attack and increasing the release time. There you go. So we still have a little bit of a line at the start there. But you can see at the end the line kind of fades out and disappears. And you'll notice that the bottom line fades out the last. So this top line disappears first, then the middle one, and then finally the bottom line. So a couple things to understand when we talk about spectrographs. That bottom line, that really thick line, we call that the fundamental frequency. If I play an E followed by a D followed by a C followed by a B, obviously that line moves down because the pitch moves down. That big thick line is what we call the fundamental frequency, and that makes the sound whatever pitch we're playing. There must be a better way to say that. So that fundamental frequency is E. It has to be E because I'm playing an E, right? But it's the number of other lines above it that make the instrument sound like the instrument. Okay, so we have 3 lines in total. We have the fundamental frequency at the bottom, and these 2 other lines, those are called harmonics, and it's the harmonics that make this sound like a sine wave played on a synthesizer, right? If we change the waveform, if we change the instrument in some way, we will have different lines. We have many, many more lines. I hope those are visible. Let's stretch this out a little bit. That might help. We have many, many more lines. We have some thick lines. We have some thin lines. We have a thick line followed by a quieter, slightly less thick line, and then a line that is the same thickness as before but brighter. Then we have a dark one, then a lighter one, then a dark one, then a lighter one. And if we change the waveform again, that's quite hard to do. Let's go for a square wave this time, because I reckon that'll look the funkiest. Oh my god, so many lines. Look at that. It's weird how many lines there are. Just many, many, many lines. So the fewer lines, the purer the sound. So I believe in terms of acoustic instruments that exist in the world today, I think the flute produces the purest sound. So I know that it does have harmonics, but it has many, many fewer than, say, a piano or a distorted electric guitar. So generally the more complex a sound, the more harmonics it has. Like I said, a distorted guitar has many, many more harmonics than a clean electric guitar or an acoustic guitar. So that's all you really need to understand in terms of how spectrographs work. The bottom line is the fundamental frequency, and it's the number of lines above it, the harmonics. It's the distance between those harmonics. It's the brightness of those harmonics relative to each other and relative to the fundamental frequency that give the instrument its sonority. The instrument sounds that way because of its harmonics, right? Now, in terms of how you actually use a spectrograph, I actually don't know. I don't actually know what the real application is of a spectrograph. Let's maybe Google that. What do I use a spectrograph for? This is something I should know. An audio spectrograph, specifically different to another kind. Spectrogram, okay. Spectrogram is a visual way of representing the signal strength or loudness of a signal over time at various frequencies in a particular waveform. Well, that's very clear. So, yeah, I'm sure there is a very specific and sciencey reason to use spectrograms, but to be honest, I use it for art purposes, and I don't really. It's never occurred to me to find out what they're actually for. Let me find. Let's for this one. Okay, so. Yeah, okay, fine. So I'm having conversations in my head and then trying to use that to convey information. So this plugin is called Supervision in Cubase, and we have lots of different ways to visualize audio, phaserscopes, multi-panorama, surround, spectrums, loudness, all of this stuff. This plugin basically exists to show us how loud a piece of music is, where potential problem areas are, all of that kind of stuff. So basically we shove, when we're mastering or trying to finalize a piece of music, we shove it into Supervision and we try to see, okay, are there any problem areas that occur to us visually that we might not necessarily see? So for example, we could have something that's got like a load of low end, and we could be listening to something and going, ooh, why does it sound rumbly and horrible? Oh, because it's got a load of low end that actually we should cut out. And that might not occur to us unless we're looking at it in a visual way, right? So let's talk about hiding images in sound. What's the best way to do this? I reckon what I should do is pull in some audio from that stream the other day, if I can find it. Type to bleed soundtrack. Is there another opportunity to talk about sonification, or is this it? This is pretty much it. Okay, again, sorry, having conversations with myself here. So sonification is a process that has fascinated me for a long, long time. There are a few different videos about it on YouTube, and I'm pleased to say that actually some of my contributions to the internet are some of the more prominent things within sonification, or that could just be because no one's looking at it, or because I don't know. But I think that's the case anyway. There's some really cool videos. Tangential, friend of the show, Martin did a video a few years ago about data sonification, which is essentially, when we say sonification, we mean taking something that isn't an audio medium and turning it into an audio medium. Data sonification is basically a way that you can take collections of data and you can turn it into sound and listen to it, and through listening to it you might be able to discern patterns that are not available visually. Humans are weirdly attuned to patterns, generally visual patterns as well as audio ones, but sometimes audio rhythms and patterns are more obvious than visual ones. So we audify or sonify data in order to process it in a different fashion. Sometimes it's more efficient to do that. Okay, that's what sonification is. That's what it's for. Tangential's video was about how scientists often use data sonification to say this is what a solar eclipse sounds like, or we translated the data into music and turns out the sound of children starving is very sad. The point of his video, you should go watch it, but here's a spoiler for the video. The point of his video is that if you take a collection of data and you apply it to music in some way, but say, okay, you are confined to A minor, and then you, as the scientist, are saying you're going to play it with in all of these A minor notes, and you're also going to play it at this slow tempo, minor key, you will have a sad song. Let's play that data on a piano. You have got a sad song, so no wonder it's sad. You play that upbeat with a ska rhythm in a major key, and unfortunately the data of children starving will be very, very, very fun. Okay, This is something that Martin gets irate about, Tangential gets irate about, I get irate about. And I think it's important to have this awareness of how sonification can kind of be abused as a process. Very harsh language from me today. That's what it feels like, right? There's other brilliant videos about sonification which are more about taking still images and implanting them within sound. Aphex Twin did it a bunch. The Doom 2016 soundtrack did it a bunch, and I do it a bunch. We are the three, okay? Did you know Gaming had a great video about the stuff hidden in Doom? And a lot of it was, you know, they use a chainsaw sound here and there. That's really fun, but they also hide satanic imagery in... Mick Gordon hides satanic imagery in the Doom soundtrack, which is very cool. And that is what kind of set me on a journey for doing the same thing. Many years ago, I fell in with a dodgy crowd, a group of artists based in Ipswich, and the whole point of what they were trying to do was start with a specific idea. Someone is inspired by that idea to go and take a photograph of a specific thing. Someone takes that photograph and does a watercolor of it. I come along and I do a sonification of that painting. Someone remixes my sonification. That was the kind of idea behind it. And they were really receptive to a lot of the sonification stuff that I was doing. So that's kind of the cornerstone of what I was practicing in terms of audio art. I was looking for a little example. Okay, so this piece of music is called The Anger of the Domovoi. This is the theme music for Type 2 Bleed. I am going to put this through a supervision, which is... Oh, it's here. Can never find it. Supervision. Here we go. And I'm going to, again, find spectrograph. This is all stuff I could have prepared in advance. All of this is spectrogram. Spectrogram. Why do I keep saying spectrograph? Because I'm an idiot. So I've turned the volume down low because this is a very aggressive piece of music. I'm going to do it as a mix down, so it's a little easier to see. So you can see that when we start... sorry to stop and start. When we add a lot of instruments, it's a lot harder to discern specific information. We could see the drum beat quite neatly there, couldn't we? These kind of harsh lines. And then this happens. Now... turn that down. So what we have here is some a little kind of waveform looking logo and some Russian characters. So without giving too much away about the film Type 2 Bleed, I mean, if you're watching this, you've probably seen it, but whatever. Type 2 Bleed is about a haunted Soviet arcade machine, and this is the name of that arcade machine, the Jupiter P55, and that weird little sound you heard between the kind of bass drum and then the main song coming in is the logo. Let me find that for you again and play it. So what I really like about that is the sound it makes is quite grainy, but like this is a horror film, right? So we have weird grainy sounds throughout anyway. We have distorted sounds, there's a lot of sound design, there's a lot of weird stuff happening in this film. So actually this occurring in the soundtrack's main theme is not untoward. It sounds a little bit offensive, but not in a way that makes you go, ooh, a mistake was made, or ooh, that's unpleasant. and then you run it through a spectrograph, and it's the friggin' name of the haunted arcade machine. I think that's really fun. And then the very special thing I did with this was later on in the song. Let's see if it's visible. Slightly harder to discern. That is the face of Richard Jackson, director of Type 2 Bleed. So how do I... It's easy to see darker there, isn't it? How did I do that? How did I put that image in there? There's a couple different methods. Let's see. Yes, no, that's another thing I could have prepared. Let's see if it opens. There is a piece of software that I used for a very long time. Oh, this hard drive does not want to open. That's helpful. Oh, sorry, Julian. I think there might be an issue trying to send links over YouTube. If you have something that you think is helpful for me to include in like the show notes or something, I don't know, can you send me like a DM or something, or find me on, Instagram or Twitter? I'm pressing all the wrong buttons. There, that's my handle, at LTGuitarist on Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Feel free to send me a DM and I'll include it in the notes, or just watch it. I don't know. There is a piece of software, sorry, I keep getting distracted, called Photo Sounder. Photo Sounder is not free, but there is a free version. The free version just emits random sound. I haven't opened this in a long time. Hey, it worked. Let's open an image. Let's open world map, black and white. Yes, that will do. No, I don't want to buy it. I just want an image, actually. God damn it. Just show me. Okay, fine. So here's an image. I'm just going to crop it real quick. Crop it like it's hot. Ooh, that is hot. Let's do that. There we go. Save as copy. Map. I'm just going to shove that on my desktop. Save. Map.jpg. Wonderful. Close that tab and that tab and that tab. So we have map.jpg, and we're going to open desktop, map.jpg. Here is a map. This is the world map. Photo Sounder is one of them programs that does exactly what it sounds like it does. It allows you to play the sound. Because my volume is all the way down. Let's try that again. Photo Sounder allows you to play the sound. It's a pretty ugly sound. Let's do we introduce? Let's bring the pitches in slightly, so the higher pitch isn't so high, the lower pitch isn't so low. Let's increase the gamma a bit. All right, that way. There we go. So we've got some higher contrast. Let's hear it now. Very cool. So let's save, and you can save this image now as a WAV, which we'll do. We'll call that map sound. We'll minimize that, and let me just grab map and map sound. Come into Visual Music. I'm just narrating everything that's going on. It's a nice way to live. I'm now going to drag map sound in. Map sound is a horrible sound. However, if we open Soup and Vision, if I open Supervision, yeah, there it is. I'm just scrolling out. Pretty cool, right? And actually, if I make that, let's go process pitch shift. I'm going to shove it up a few cents. There we go. Or a few, nearly an octave. And play it again. And hopefully it'll appear slightly higher up. Might be easier to read. Ooh. It's actually degraded it in a horrible way. Let's undo that. And try it again. Okay, so yeah, sometimes when you change pitch, obviously you create artifacts and the image is then more distorted. So that is pretty much how to add images into music. And of course we can visualize music through spectrographs as well. We can, if we really wanted to, use Photosounder. One of the more special things about it is it comes with the ability to paint pitches. I mean, this is going to sound horrible, but it's discernible as something kind of musical, isn't it? It sounds a bit like a horror score or something. I'm trying to remove that. Can I get rid of that? No, fine. So if I go in here and I just kind of screw with this, how does that affect the sound? It's kind of got a phasery kind of thing going on, doesn't it? Interesting. Photosounder is great if you just want to screw around with spectrograms and image conversion. There is also a plugin, an instrument called Harmor by ImageLine. Ooh, that's an unhappy looking plugin. Why is that? Add instrument Harmor. Oh. Okay, that's interesting. Why has it done that? I also shouldn't have got rid of that. Oh, okay. I think it's because I had to reinstall some stuff, so maybe Harmor didn't come along with it. Harmor by ImageLine is an interesting plugin. It's an instrument that allows you to add these kind of visual elements. It's the same company that made Fruity Loops, so it's a synthesizer, but it has like this little bit where you can add visual elements to interact with the sound that you're making in some way. I've had mixed results with it. I've found that if I want an image to show up really clearly in whatever I'm doing, the best way for me to achieve that is through Photosounder. Okay, so I would highly recommend Photosounder. Photosounder is quite easy to find. If you just do a big old Google, Photosounder, there he is. This website hasn't changed in a while time. Oh, there's a new Photosounder. Interesting. Well, I'm going to have a little look at that. Interesting. Okay, yeah, no, that might be worth having a little look at. They also have some other stuff. Interesting. Well, that's a big rabbit hole for me to fall down later. Neat. So, carrying on to method number 3. Boy, we're making good time. Waveform visualization / oscilloscopes. Now, there is a difference between waveform visualization and oscilloscopes, but it's something very scientific that just isn't important to this stream. Does that mean I don't understand the difference? Yes. That's exactly what that means. As far as I can tell, the simple version of what that difference is that a waveform shows from left to right. It shows time from left to right, and the height of the waveform is amplitude. Hang on. Oh yes, sorry, I've got my notes ass backwards here. I thought that was the difference between the two things. It's not. Let me open up something with waveform. Drums with waveform. Wonderful. So we've got Studio Drummer. Wonderful. Let's open up Supervision again. So this is Contact 7 with pop drum kit in there. This is, again, Supervision, but we're using the waveform visualization. Yes, let's reduce that a bit. So we can see here, these were snares and these are kick drums. So we're basically seeing time again moving in the same way left to right. The height of these waveforms is the amplitude. So you can see that obviously the slightly the snare drum played with less velocity is obviously smaller, higher velocity is taller. It starts taller and it starts very tall and then very suddenly reduces down. So what we're hearing is the initial impact of hitting a snare drum with a stick, and then it sort of dissipates very quickly, and then we just hear like a bit of the sort of snare, the metal element rattling underneath the snare. That's what we're seeing here. And the kick drum we can see is it's an interesting shape because it's quite small, but we can really clearly see these lines. Yeah, these kind of wiggly lines wiggling away. And basically, if the pitch is kind of hard to discern with waveforms, which is actually why I use drum kit, but if we were to zoom in really close to this snare, possibly closer than this doesn't really allow us to zoom in that way. Oh, it does. Okay. We'll try that in a moment. If we were to zoom in really close to this snare, it would start to look like this. So what we're seeing here is the up and down, where it goes. We've got this middle line in the middle, and it goes up and down either side of that. Going up is called compression. Going down is called rarefaction. Is it important? No, but it is fun to say. Compression and rarefaction. And the speed of the compression and rarefaction is what indicates pitch. So this is so wide that we can see it. The same thing is happening here, but we can't really see it. So that means that this is a lower pitch than this. Yeah? I actually have some hardware. Okay, let's sorry, before I get distracted, let's try and zoom in. So I'm using Control and mouse wheel. So we've zoomed in significantly, and again we can see this up down wiggly line. And again, the louder, the bigger, right? And if we do the same with the kick, now we can really see. Not only can we see the wiggly lines, we can also see that there's like wiggly lines within those wiggly lines, yeah, which means it's quite a complex waveform. That's the basics of waveforms. I think they look rad. I have a piece of hardware actually. This old thing. This is an ETC by Critter and Guitari. Ba-bam. This is hardware that you feed an audio signal into, and you get an HDMI out, and it displays waveforms, and it displays a few different ways to visualize music. I think it runs either off an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi. which is really nifty, and it basically just outputs these audio visualizations. I use that a lot, and I also when I'm lucky enough to have access to Adobe After Effects, there's some great audio visualization stuff in After Effects that I use. I think you can have frequency visualization, which we'll talk about later, like an EQ, and waveform visualization. Let me bring over this music video. This is one of mine. This is the Offering, which is from Type 2 Bleed again. The reason I want to show you this is basically, you can ignore the background. Don't ignore the background. The background's cool. The background isn't pertinent to what we're talking about. The background is from a piece of glitchy video hardware. The thing I want you to pay attention to is the circle in the middle, right? This is a waveform visualization, but it's put into a circle rather than the straight lines that we were seeing. And you can sort of see that when it's louder, the wiggly lines are bigger, and when we have deeper sounds, we have bigger waves as well, right? Let's get to a bit with a beat. So that's an example of the Critter and Guitari ETC in action. There's a few bits of hardware that do the same thing. I'm pretty happy with that one because it takes MIDI commands and it's really easy to plug into a capture device. And they have a new version as well, which I can't afford. And that one's doing just fine. So I'm probably not going to upgrade anytime soon. So that's waveform visualization. If you've ever seen an oscilloscope is doing a similar thing. And I'm not totally sure on the difference. Maybe an oscilloscope is just you're seeing way more detail, I guess. So again, the reason I use that in this video is just because it's a fun way to visualize audio, and it has applications inside of Cubase, inside of actual music production, I guess. But as far as I'm concerned, what it does is it makes cool wiggly lines that are reactive to the audio you're feeding it, and that's what I care about. Have I used it? I'm almost certain I've used it in Art from Sound at some point. Waveforms will have made an appearance somewhere. So this is just a still waveform over, to be honest, I'm not sure what. This is a waveform kind of through a kaleidoscope effect. More waveforms through kaleidoscopes, waveforms in front of eyeballs, waveforms through mirrors and reversed. That's a 3D waveform. That's a spectrograph, I think. Waveform? Yeah, harder to discern what that is. A waveform. This was that hardware projected on top of a drum cymbal, and then we hit the drum cymbal and plugged a microphone into the visualizer, so that sound that we're hearing is the sound that we're seeing, right? Which I think is cool. That's a waveform. That's a waveform. One more. That's a waveform. I like waveforms. I just think they look cool. Is that everything I want to talk about in terms of waveforms? No questions about waveforms. No, I think we good. Waveform. God, I haven't said that word this much. Oh, also, of course, we have the waveforms here inside of Cubase, and we can see that again. The waveforms are really important. I suppose I got distracted by seeing them in supervision. I forgot about what I use waveforms for every day. I use waveforms when I'm editing video. The reason I use Vegas Pro is because it, number one, it resembles audio software like Cubase, and it also is, I think, pretty much the only video editor that displays audio waveforms in a way that is helpful. So obviously the human voice has a waveform, and I try, because my day job is in marketing, I do a lot of online content, video editing stuff. So if I'm editing a video, I want to make sure that I'm not cutting in the middle of someone saying a word. So I look for instances of gaps between dialogue where I make my cuts. So that's what I use waveforms for day to day. And you can also see, if you're editing a music video, we can really clearly see the beats. So that's a beat, that's a beat, that's a beat, I think. That's a beat. It's just where you've got these big lines. So if I were to be editing a music video to this piece of music, I would be making visual cuts to the beats. Yeah. And obviously being able to see the waveforms here when there's less going on, it's really obvious where these beats are. There's loads there, but like you make any of the cuts you want to beats, and then it feels like it fits with the music. If you're not editing to the beat, you're sort of not really editing with the music in mind. Yeah. Things feel better when you're editing to beats is what I'm trying to get at. EQ visualization is a little bit different to EQ visualization is a little bit different. Here is Retrolog again, the synthesizer that ships free with Cubase that I'm a big fan of. This frequency plugin is very helpful. It's helpful to visualize whatever sounds we happen to be making. Let's simplify this sound a little bit. Let's go sine wave. This is related to what we were talking about earlier with the spectrogram. If I play a very simple sound like C3, we have one very big lump, and we also have one very, very small lump. This lump is our fundamental frequency, that's why it's so big. This is a harmonic. If I change this to a different waveform, the fundamental frequency stays exactly the same, but we have different harmonics on top of it, and they reduce in volume over time. Yeah, same again. Lots of harmonics, and again, loads and loads of harmonics there. Yeah. So why is this particular thing helpful to see? So I just wanted to give you an example of how that relates to other stuff we've seen. Now we're going to talk about how it's actually helpful in its own right. I use these kind of visualizers. I use these EQ visualizers every day when I'm working on music. Because, let's put it this way. Let's say this is the part that, let's say that's a thing that is in a song. Now, as I said, this is our fundamental frequency for this particular root note. Anything below that is just noise, just low-end rumble caused by whatever instrument we're playing. I'm going to reduce the volume because it's very annoying. If I hold that, you'll see that low end, that sort of 200 hertz down to 20 hertz, that reduces after time, but when you start playing, it's there. Now the problem with that is if you have 5 or 6 instruments, or even less than that, and they're all generating some sort of low-end rumble, you're going to create a lot of clutter in that low end. And you have instruments that belong in the low end. You've got kick drums, you've got bass guitar. they're already competing in this space, so I don't want to add anything extra to that. So what I do is I add a pretty dramatic cut right below our fundamental frequency. So let's say that we're playing, what notes am I playing there? So this is mostly E. I'm occasionally playing a D, but actually I'm not going to go below that. So anything lower than that lowest note, the D, we just don't need. It's just in the way. So that's something that I do on every instrument, and no joke, every instrument gets this low cut treatment. If there's rumble happening below there, don't need it. It's in the way. It's also in the way, not often in a perceptible way, but when you kind of add all these instruments together, it feels really cluttered. And if you aren't just doing this from the start, you're going to end up with a muddy sounding mix. Okay. So I do that for everything. Even bass guitar, even if bass guitar is operating like at 50 hertz, anything lower than that, in the bin. Okay. Another purpose of this from a practical standpoint is, say, we've got, this is doing its thing. Let's say that this is the kind of lead synth, but it's not taking the lead at all times. Let's say we have a vocal coming in, or another, let's say we have another synth coming in, or we have another instrument that we want to kind of take over, and we want them to have control of the upper range. And one of the most straightforward things you can do is add a high shelf and then just cut out some of the high end whilst this other instrument takes over, right? And then we can automate that to go back to where it was in the first place. So this is it normal, and then when we don't want it to take center stage, we just take down some of that high end and then bring it back when we want this to come back and take center stage, right? So that's is really helpful to have a way to look at this visually, because I can say, I know for a fact that I don't need anything below 200 hertz because my fundamental frequency is here. And yeah, we've got some body of that fundamental frequency in this area. I want to keep hold of that because that's part of this note, this fundamental frequency. But anything lower than that, I do not need. So that's why having a visual EQ is very helpful. And again, this isn't something that, like, on an individual basis with one instrument, you're not going to hear this, but you're going to feel it when you start adding instruments on top of it. Okay, so that's what it's for from a practical perspective. Again, I think these kind of frequency, what do we call it? The frequency visualizers, I think again look really cool. I think if we open up Art from Sound again, I reckon I've put some of these through mirrors at some point. I think that's a waveform. It's going to be almost impossible to tell a wave from EQ. That's a waveform. That's a waveform. 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 That's going to be a spectrogram. I would also set it in the tags, which is very helpful of me. Maybe I haven't. No, that's a waveform. Interesting. So maybe I haven't used it. That could be. Who knows? Not me. I'm not sure. From an art perspective, I think you can pretty much do the same thing as you would do with a waveform. They look very similar. I think... Oh yeah, maybe I'll open up After Effects and show off some of the stuff in there. I'll perhaps do that towards the end. I mean, we're coming up towards the end. We've only got a couple more points and they're quite small ones. So we'll leave EQ there and perhaps come back to that, perhaps revisit that in a second. Here is something that's very cool and purely creative. which is why I like this. This doesn't have a real world. Well, this real world function is just art. This is a composite combiner by Lo-Fi Future. It is a composite video mixer. You put 2 video signals into it and you get one out. You have a mix between these 2 video signals, which is here, and you basically just fade between the 2. That element is called a dirty mixer. They're quite easy to make. You can buy them off Etsy, but there isn't really a point because they are so very easy to make. What is special about this is that when you have it kind of set in the middle between the 2 video sources, and you attach an audio jack in, it will glitch between the 2 videos according to the amplitude of what you're giving it, of the audio you're feeding it. Right? You dig? I use this just all the time. Like I have this whole sort of VHS AV setup behind me. Let's see if we can find an example of this. Again, something I could have prepped in advance, but I didn't. Let's have a little look here. This button. I'm sure I do somewhere. I feel like this video. Oh yeah. So yeah, you can see the composite combiner there. So that little intro bit is probably the easiest bit to see, I guess. Oh no, that's something else. My bad. So this camera angle is one of the things I'm feeding the composite combiner. This thing of the duck is actually something else that I added in after the fact. We'll keep an eye out. I reckon the other camera will be on this synthesizer. His name's Willard Mallard. Oh, maybe I didn't. Okay, so that glitch effect there is the 2 video sources being mixed together in accordance to the amplitude that we were feeding it, right? That's all I really wanted to talk about for that thing. So we're taking amplitude and we're turning that. We're using amplitude to mix between 2 visual sources in a kind of fun, glitchy sort of way, right? And that is something that I use like for loads of these videos. I mean, I've done loads and loads of these. I think that's a really fun sort of not an interactive element, but responsive kind of multimedia element. I definitely used it in the sunset video. I definitely used it in this thing. Yeah, like loads of these kind of glitchy videos. Oh, there's a good one. So I think I had one camera on this waveform, which is built into the Korg monologue, by the way, which is very cool. And you can see sort of sliding along the background here with like this very, very, my face is in the way, very opaque Novation instrument here. And again, like now you can see the opposite. You can see the Novation circuit and you can see the waveform of the monologue on top, because I switched between the 2 stages, and I think we saw that happening about here. Yeah, there you go. So that was just me turning the button on the composite combiner to switch between the 2 stages. So that was a piece of hardware that cost me like 120 quid. I'm a big fan of Lo-Fi Future. Hopefully got some more stuff from them arriving whenever. So that's a way of taking amplitude and using amplitude as the basis to create something kind of glitchy and cool, right? Tempo editing, we sort of talked about. I think we might be done with Cubase for the moment. Let's see if I can maybe find a good example of tempo-based editing inside of the project file. Again, I could have prepared this in advance, but I didn't. Social music, here we go. Let's go big. Let's close that. Atari Punk versus Novation Circuit. Novation. Dumb Funky Vignettes. Ooh. Dumb Funky Vignettes might be... Yeah, okay. So that took a hot second for me to pick a project I wanted to share, because I was trying to find something that hadn't already, something that had already been released, so I wasn't spoilering myself. That is an older version of Movie Studio that I would rather not use. Yeah, I imagine there would be an error message. Let's try that again. Open with the new software, please. Let's give that a hot second. So what I'm hoping to find, if it works... Oh, what do you mean missing files? Yeah, search for missing file. Come on. Dumb Funky Vignettes. Right, sorry, this will take but a second. It's like a regular second, but it's buttery. 983. 98, excuse me. No items match your search. Are you sure? There's 983. 983. Oh yeah, it's not that. Maybe it doesn't matter. Let's see. So what I'm hoping is... Okay. So this is the video. Sorry it's so small. This is the audio. This is the actual track. We've got some candid audio at the start here.
This is my best work.
Just for fun. So we have the actual track. So the very first thing we see is my buddy Sai playing, sat there about to play the bass, and then we have this shot of me about to play the clave with the little drum fill. That's just screen cap from Cubase, and those come in. You'll notice that actually we can't really cut exactly on this beat. That beat, for whatever reason, is exactly halfway between the two frames that we have access to here. So this could start here or it could start here. Doesn't matter. The important thing is that they basically come in on the beat. Like, that amount of distance is negligible. As far as I'm concerned, that comes in on the beat. Because when you zoom in that close, like, we're not talking about perceptive distance there. So the important thing is that we make these cuts as close to the beat as possible. Like this one, for example, that could have been there and that might have been a bit better. I guess I just wasn't really paying attention, so that would be a better cut there. This is a really silly song. So what we're using here is we're reading these waveforms to see... the waveforms tell us amplitude, right? But what is important to know about that is that the loudest beats are almost always on beat one of a piece of music, right? So we're using that, and we can see that actually that's the start of a beat there, because that's the kick drum. So I know that to there, that should be a bar. If we loop that, it should be very nearly a perfect loop. which it is. We could get an even more perfect loop if we were working with more frames per second, but we're not. So we know that that's the start of a bar because it has the biggest and clearest waveform, right? Especially easy to know because we're working with this kind of very sparse, funky track. Electro music, if it's not very crowded, I think dance music is quite easy to tell because like you've got that really solid 4 on the floor. Some like rock music is quite hard to discern where these 1 beats are. This piece, I'm glad I chose this piece because it's quite easy to see. So we're reading the waveform to know where the highest amplitude is because we know that's beat number 1, and then we're editing to the tempo of the music video. I imagine we'll see that all of these cuts, so this video clip comes in here. So these end here where this one comes in. Again, mirrors because it's me. This clip ends again, I imagine, on a beat. Yeah, look at that. Perfect. There's another cut here right before that beat, right on it. Another cut here, sort of in the middle of that beat. Fine. Another cut here. Just after that, could we get... Oh, we could have got closer to that if we wanted to. Maybe I was in a rush. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. Maybe I don't care. All things are possible. And again, that could probably be there. Yeah, but that's fine. So we are using... we are reading the waveforms to be able to read amplitude, and then we're editing according to the time, the tempo, the speed of the song. We're editing on those beats. In pretty much, not all, but the vast majority of Western music, the strongest beat is on the first beat of a bar, so that's where we edit to, and that is the function of it. It's easier to watch music videos that are edited to the beat than not. Yeah. So that's the function of editing to the beat. The last method of audio visualization I want to talk about, we'll maybe dip into After Effects for 10 minutes in a second. Last thing I want to talk about is synesthesia. Synesthesia is a neurological phenomenon. 2 words I find very hard to say. It's a neurological phenomenon rather than a piece of software. The idea of synesthesia is that some people, when listening to music, experience vivid colours. Now, what does that mean? It means that for some people it's a really vivid visual sensation. If they're listening to music, they will see colours, right? And it's caused by having more connections between the left and right. I believe I haven't properly examined this in some time, because there isn't a very helpful application to it. It's just kind of cool. I believe it's caused by over-connection between, or more connections than is normal, between the left and right side of the brains. So things in the mind interact in ways that they wouldn't normally. I don't have proper vivid synesthesia, but I do have color associations. So if I play a G chord, that feels like a nice bright sky blue, kind of like a little bit brighter than the blue that's behind me now. F is green, B is purple, D is yellow. What's interesting about this is that not all people, but some people tend to agree on what some of these colors are. I believe F is green for most people. G is blue for most people. I think an overwhelming majority think that D is yellow. D is very sunny and very bright. And there's other kinds of synesthesia as well. Like if I visualize the number 5 in my brain, if I just have 5 in my brain, I have quite a clear image in my head. The number 5 itself is green, and it has a white kind of outline. If I think of 3, 3 is blue to me. 3 doesn't have an outline. Yeah. Now, I think that 3 being blue is what has influenced me to think that the chord of G is blue, because G is rooted to the 3rd fret on guitar. So I think I'm copying that blueness from there. I've not examined it loads, but I don't think me thinking D is yellow is to do with... Oh, wait, no, I worked it out because there's like, it kind of looks like a Y on the fretboard. Never mind. But it is interesting. On some instruments, people do tend to agree on what colours they think music is. What is the practical purpose of synesthesia? There generally isn't one, I don't think. I do sometimes use it to inform color choices for music videos. So if we're working on a piece of music which is in the key of G, I'm most likely to suggest kind of cold blue colors. Yeah, maybe a little bit of teal, maybe a bit of dark blue, but generally it's going to be a blue palette or a palette that complements blue quite nicely. Similarly, if we're writing a piece of music and it's in F, my visual suggestions are going to be green, D, yellow, so forth. So I found that to be quite a helpful thing. It's the sort of thing that actually, if you're writing a piece of music in F, you can use whatever colours you damn well please. If you're writing a song in F and the song was in some way about the colour red, it would be weird if the music video didn't involve red in a predominant way. So if you're in a situation where you have to make a music video for a piece of music, there are no lyrical clues to what... there are no clues in the lyrics as to what colour palette you should use. There's nothing mentioned there. The emotional aspects of the music don't make you think of specific colours. In that case, it might be worth thinking, okay, so we're in A minor, so actually red, right? That's as practical as I think synesthesia is. Like I say, I don't have it in a vivid way. I do have some associations, but I think that they might kind of be polluted by other elements of what I'm playing, or of how I'm playing music. Let's dip into Adobe After Effects real quick, and let's see if we can find something to visualize. You migrate my settings. I haven't opened this in a while, I guess. Let's add. So I'm just trying to think of something, of a little sound file to... Oh, there I am. A little sound file. What sound file to add? Let's use that same one. That piece was named Teal. Renders Teal. There we go. I'm just going to drag and drop. So let's bring this here. So this is that same video from before. I'm going to... what are we doing here? So I'm just giving a little demonstration of how we can do waveform animation inside of After Effects. I'm going to create a new solid. Dark turquoise solid. Yep, that's just green. Fine. If we go to effects and presets up here and we type in audio, we have audio spectrum and audio waveform. If I drag audio waveform over here, we have a purple line. All hail the purple line. What we need to do is go up here and we need to tell After Effects that we are referencing an audio layer. We are referencing the audio in Vignette Teal. That was just the name of that piece. So now, if we move this along, we can see we have a nice little waveform there. I'm actually going to turn off the visual for this. Let's give it a little play.
This is my best work.
Which is fine. We can increase the height so we can see it a little better.
This is my best work.
We can do some other stuff. We can change the duration. So if we get into the nitty gritty, it kind of looks like an oscilloscope. And let's get really close in like this.
This is my best work.
I'm also gonna start playback kind of here. Let's zoom out instead. You know, at this point it's sort of hard to discern any helpful information from it, like it doesn't really look like the piece. It's a bit better. This is a lot like what we saw earlier. So there are options within that. We can have this digital kind of line here. That might be quite hard to see. We can have dots. Of course, something that I quite like is combining those. So let's say we have analog. Let's go digital there. Let's do this. I'm actually going to duplicate this effect. I'm going to composite on original, so we have the same thing going on. I'm going to make this one dots though, and I'm going to make it higher. So you can see that we have dots on top of these waveforms. Maybe we change the colors slightly as well. Make these ones a little brighter. So that's kind of cool. What else could we do? Something that I quite like doing is putting these into circles. So with this react to polar effect, we want react to polar rather than polar to react. We do this, and we have we nearly have a circle. The reason we don't have a circle, I'm going to get rid of that layer for the moment, the dots. The reason we don't have a circle is because we have gaps here and here. So if we make this start at 0 and we make this end at 1080, there we go. If we turn this on, it becomes a circle. So now what we have is much more like the you know, that green circle from earlier with the Critter and Guitari hardware. This is another way to essentially create the same thing. We also have, as another example, if I get rid of that, with audio spectrum. So this is more like the EQ we were looking at. So again, I needed to reference this track. I'm going to make it slightly brighter so it's easier for y'all to see. I need it to start at 0 and end at 1080. And again, we have a similar thing. We need to increase the height substantially. Now, as you can probably tell, what we're seeing here is more like the EQ spectrum. So we've got low end stuff going on here, high end stuff going on here. And again, we can put that in this circle. So that's kind of cool. Something I see people do quite often is have that halfway. Crap, what's half of 1080? 540? 540, there we go. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to make sure it is composite on original, so we have both. And I'm actually going to set it to be the opposite. So I want it to start at 540 and end at 0. No, that's not what I want at all. Start at 540, end 1080. No, what's wrong? 0. Oh. Right. Yes. Okay. Start. I'm an idiot. I was just editing the wrong number. Because I dumb. So now we have these kind of bassy frequencies in the middle. I might actually say start frequency 11. That's kind of cool. So then if we put that into the polar coordinates, let's end it at 1200. I think I've done something wrong there. Maximum height. Oh yeah, whoops. What's the maximum height? Quite big. Maximum height. You can tell I haven't done this in a while. End frequency 2000. End frequency. Let's go 600. And this one also 600. That's quite a bit more satisfying to see because we're just seeing the very, very low end. Yeah, that's quite cool. So those are some kind of practical ways that we can use these quite arty. We can use these not so arty things in quite an arty way. And the sort of thing that I do all the time. It's literally what I do for fun. I feel like we've covered everything. Let me just check my notes. Tempo editing, synesthesia. Yeah. So if you want to see these different things in action, like probably the best place to go is to my YouTube, youtube.com/LTGuitarist. I'm live right now. If you go to my videos, or maybe even playlists, we've got weird music, we've got circuit bending in video, we've got glitchy music. Glitchy music is probably the place to see a lot of this stuff. And yeah, I think all of the things we've spoken about I have used in some way. I perhaps haven't used score here. I've used score, like I said, on the Art from Sound Instagram. Spectrographs I've used occasionally. I use the process of hiding images in audio for more for less glitchy stuff. That's maybe something I need to incorporate, is adding images into some of this stuff. You know, watch this space, we'll see. Waveform visualization, oscilloscopes, EQ visualization, yes, on probably all of these. Dirty mixer on most of these. Tempo editing, all of these in some way. Synesthesia is helpful when thinking about color choices, and that's, you know, if like the LEDs that I'm using behind me, obviously, they're set to G major right now. I control those when I'm making this music, so all of this music is this little area behind me here, so I can say, okay, well, we're doing this kind of B minor-y jazzy thing, so maybe kind of purple and orange lights is appropriate. So you'll see like some of my color choices here. Sometimes I'll just set the lights to do their own thing and then just use it because I'm more worried about the effects of having these LEDs than necessarily what color they are. It also can affect how I edit them afterwards. So like I might then take all the footage in and then just create, you know, recolor it to fit with whatever I want to do. Because I'm an artist. Yeah. I feel like we covered so much, man. I have been LT Guitarist. I find it weird when people say that. When I turn the stream off, I will cease to be LT Guitarist and I will become Fernando. Just Fernando. It's a nice name. You can tell I've reached the end of the script because I'm wittering like a moron. I will continue to be LT Guitarist and you can't stop me. Please do check out some of the crazy funky videos on YouTube. Please do check out at Art from Sound on Instagram. I might get back into it. You know, if people like it, I almost certainly will. If you have questions about anything that has come up, don't be afraid to find me on Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. Those are the places that I am the most active. If you want to leave a comment on this stream, if you're watching later, which I imagine you would be, please do leave a comment. I respond to... Well, if there's a question in there, I will actually respond. If there's not a question, I might. You can tweet me. You can find me on Instagram. Yeah. This was a lot of fun. What's the next stream? I feel like I should know that. What is the next stream? Next Monday we are doing digital minimalism, which will be fun. Monday the 10th we are doing lo-fi. Monday the 17th we're doing chap hop. Oh god, I need to prep for that one. That'll be fun. Maybe break out the banjolele. I don't own a banjolele. Anyone got a banjolele? Anyway, I'm going to keep saying banjolele. You can't stop me. I will see you folks next Monday. Yeah? Alright, toodaloo.